Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Clayton County Board of Education Board Work Session. I'm going to call the meeting to order. Please answer when I call your name, starting with District 1, Jasmine Bowles. District 2, Mr. Mark Christmas.
Present.
District 3, Jesse Gore-Reed, that would be me. District 4, Miss Victoria Williams. Present. District 5, Dr. D. Haney.
Present.
District 6, Miss Mary Baker.
Present.
District 7, Miss Sabrina Hill.
Present.
District 8, Miss Joy Tellis Cooper.
Present.
District 9, Mr. Benjamin Straker.
Present.
Interim Superintendent, Dr. Anthony Smith.
Present.
Attorney Clem Doyle.
Present.
Kim Blackwood, I'm sorry.
Present.
Okay. Miss Arlicia Battle. And Miss Don Blau. All right. Before we do the pledge, I'm going to ask for a moment of silence. My heart is real heavy tonight. This is actually not one of our students, but after we had a wonderful graduation, most school districts had graduations last week and ended on Friday. I believe her name is Miss Briasia Powell, a student at Mays. They all are children as far as I'm concerned. Ended up deceased in a very senseless situation. Before I left the house, I believe a Marietta High School student has been killed. They're sending crisis team. And also I want to recognize my own line sister who was a assistant principal in Fulton County, had been a cancer survivor, Adrian Granger Smith. Please stand. I'm sorry, let's take a moment of silent reflection, please. Thank you. I'm going to I'm changing the order of the agenda. It says pledge, but it said executive session, but we're gonna do the pledge and then we'll go back to executive session. Let's stand and say the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we'll go back. We'll make sure we switch that around next meeting where we do the pledge before executive session. I'm going to have us discuss executive session discussion where we discuss legal matters and personnel matters. And I'm going to start with the legal matter first. At this time, I want to make a motion to approve our attorneys to proceed with the social media litigation as discussed in executive session. That's the motion. I need a second. Mr. Christmas.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and properly second. Please vote. Ms. Baker. All right, the vote is unanimous, 8-0. All right, I'm gonna turn over the superintendent's recommendations to Dr. Smith.
Madam Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the board, colleagues, and community members, good evening. I would like for the board to consider a recommendation for the position of assistant principal at Forest Park High School for Dr. Miranda Colbert.
Board members, I need a motion for the superintendent's recommendation of Dr. Miranda Colbert as the assistant principal at Forest Park High School. Ms. Williams.
I move that we accept the superintendent's recommendation.
All right, I need a second. Ms. Cooper.
Second.
It's been moved and properly second that we accept the superintendent's recommendation. Please vote. It is a unanimous vote, 8-0.
Congratulations, Dr. Colbert. Please stand. Thank you, board members. I would also like for the board to consider for the position of assistant principal at Anderson Elementary School, Sean German Tucker.
Board
Tucker.
members, I need a motion for the superintendent's recommendation of Sean German Tucker as the assistant principal at Anderson Elementary School. Ms. Cooper.
I move that we accept the superintendent's recommendation for Sean German Tucker as the assistant principal at Anderson Elementary.
I need a second. Ms. Hill.
I second that motion, Madam Chair.
It's been moved and properly second. Please vote. It is a unanimous vote, 8-0.
Congratulations. Could Sean German Tucker please stand? Congratulations. All right, thank you, board members. I would also like for the board to consider for the position of assistant principal at Harper Elementary School for Rashonda Thames.
All right, we need a motion for the superintendent's recommendation of Rashonda Thames as the assistant principal at Harper Elementary School. I'm gonna make that motion. I need a second. Ms. Williams?
I second it.
All right, it's been moved and properly second that we accept the superintendent's recommendation. And I hope I pronounce your name correctly, because sometimes it's pronounced as Tim's. Okay, so I see, I'm going back. All right, sorry. Can we get the votes? Can I get the rest of the board to vote, please? Thank you. Sorry, Ms. Timms. That is a unanimous vote.
Congratulations, Ms. Timms. Please stand. Those are all of my recommendations for tonight, board members. Thank you.
All right. Don't leave, you all. We would like to kind of get a picture with you all in front of us. All right, we have another matter that we discussed in executive session. And that is a tribunal. And we need a motion for the superintendent's recommendation for a tribunal 2022-2023-04. Ms. Baker.
Madam Chair, I move that we accept the superintendent's recommendation and the tribunal's findings for the 2022-2023-04 employee tribunal.
Thank you. I need a second. Ms. Williams, I think.
I second it.
All right. It's been moved and properly second that we accept the superintendent's recommendation. Please vote. And it is unanimous. All right, thank you all. We have discussed all of the executive session items. Can we get those new promoted people to get a picture with you all? Well, you know what? You know what? I didn't even, I'm looking at an e-board.
So,
We got all that. Oh, sorry. No, I actually didn't even read the, I should have gone where I wanted to be at tonight. I'm just messed up. All right, you all, I'm gonna beg for forgiveness. I was supposed to be somewhere this evening. I was supposed to be at a memorial service, and I'm just a little messed up. I failed to read the ethics statement, but I will say that I don't think anybody had a problem, anything ethically, but I'm gonna read it because I'm just a little upset right now. So I should have read this after the pledge, which is in accordance with board policy BH. It is the duty of every board member to avoid both conflicts of interest and appearances of such conflicts. Does any board member have any known conflict of interest or appearance of such conflict with respect to any matter scheduled to come before the board at this meeting or appearing on our proposed agenda? If so, please identify the conflict or appearance of conflict and refrain from participation in the matter involved. We didn't have anybody with a conflict, but I needed to read that. At this time, we do need to adopt the agenda. So I need a motion to adopt the agenda, Ms. Baker.
I move that we adopt the agenda as is.
All right, and Mr. Christmas?
Second.
All right, it's been moved and properly second. Ms. Hill? All right, it's a unanimous vote. All right, at this time, we've already done those recommendations from executive session. I was actually following what was on e-board. Let's go to the next item, which is updates to the board. Before, Dr. Smith, did you want to mention anything before we have your staff come forth regarding our graduation especially?
But thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, indeed, want to thank all of the volunteers for their support. We had 12 very successful graduations, starting on Tuesday over at the Performing Arts Center and wrapping up Friday night at the Georgia International Convention Center. Certainly do appreciate the special award that was given out at Mondays Mill High School graduation in honor of my mother. I want to thank all of the people who contributed to that scholarship. I just want to thank my colleagues and this community for all everybody does. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I'm going to add that Dr. Smith is really being a bit humble about the award that he gave, named after his mom. I won't tell you the amount, but I did send him a note on Saturday. It was what I consider to be a life changer award. If you could have seen that young man, if you could have seen his mother, and when Ms. Rice talked about this some time ago, I did not expect it to have that impact, but when that mother came up on the stage, I'm sorry, y'all, I'm tearing up. I think we were all crying. I know Victoria and I were, and Dr. Haynes, we were just teary-eyed out. The men were very impressed with it. That mother sat on that front row. I told her, I said, you know, bring your family up. Is your family here? And I mean, she sat there and cried a good 20 to 30 minutes. The rest of the people around her were consoling her. She was on the phone. They was just talking about the opportunity. And so anyway, he's being real
Thank you.
humble. And I'm sorry, I'm just emotional tonight, Joe. So
Thank you,
I
ma'am.
really I'm gonna give you a standing ovation for that. And for our staff. Thank you. All right, y'all. Y'all forgive me. I get emotional over these things. I always have to have Kleenex anyway when we have graduations. So I'm gonna turn it over to you, Dr. Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the board, colleagues, and community members. Would like to provide an update from our Teaching and Learning and Strategic Improvement Division done by Dr. Delphia Young.
All right. Good evening, Madam Chair, Goree and Vice Chair Straker, members of the board, Interim Superintendent Smith, and the community. Tonight, I present to you a very brief update on our GMAS testing and our 2023-2024 calendar that involves our testing. And following my presentation, you will hear from some very important people. You will receive an update from our K-12 English Language Arts Department, Ms. Ebony Brown, our K-5 ELA coordinator, and Ms. Regina Willingham, who is our 612 ELA coordinator, will jointly present a presentation about what we're doing in language arts. Following that presentation, you will hear more about our wonderful travel opportunities for our students, and that will be presented to you by Ms. Anna Cox, who is the K-12 World Languages Coordinator, and Ms. Regina Wallace, who is our K-12 Social Studies Coordinators, and we have 2 guest students who will be joining them. So before I begin, I want to remind everyone that summer school is coming very fast, officially starting June 5th, although we have our extended year program for our special education students that has started. And so again, the major kickoff is June 5th. Board members, if parents or your constituents have questions, please, please, please forward those messages to me, and I will ensure they receive a prompt response. And I also will provide you, as soon as our summer program begin, we're gonna look at it for the first week. I will give you an update on our first week of sessions, and then you will continue to get weekly updates on how we're progressing through our summer program during the month of June. Again, if anyone has questions, please, please direct those questions to me, and I will ensure that our constituents, your constituents, will receive prompt responses.
Dr. Young,
Yes.
before you move on, since you're discussing summer school, can you tell us some of the sites that they're located at?
Sure.
Okay.
Ms. Blackwood will help me with that.
All right.
Well, of course, Ms. Jessica Corey got me prepared. What?
You want to just mention them so the people that are looking,
Just wait.
that are online.
All right. Kelly, let me have one of those, please. I got enough. Get me help one of those. All right. Thank you. Appreciate it. All right. So where are we hosting our summer program? For our high school, our summer programs are wherever they can log in online. So that's where our summer school is for high school, wherever they can log in online. And so we have our summer schools. We We have various host sites for our elementary and middle schools. And so our host sites, we have identified some school attending that particular host site, and we can have this information put on our website. For example, our host sites are Jackson Elementary, East Clayton, Michelle Obama, King Elementary, Callaway Elementary, Lake Ridge Elementary, Marshall Elementary, Haney Elementary, Eddie White Middle, M.D. Roberts, Kendrick Middle, Morrow Middle, and we have some specialized programs at Stillwell High School. And those programs are for some high school students in our fine arts camp. And so again, those are our host sites. And for each of those host sites, we have a number of schools that feed into those schools, and we can post that information on our website. Any other questions about summer school? As I said before, I will give you a weekly update after we start our first week, and just please look for that in your email.
Just a minute, Dr. Young. Ms. Baker?
Just a question, on the extended sessions for some of our students that are currently in there, are they going to their home schools, or are we doing the same kind of grouping the schools together?
Say that again.
For the extended session that we've already started, are they all going to their home schools, or we have certain locations?
We have certain location, and that extended session is, if you check your email,
Okay.
and in your email, if you open it up, it's from me, that has that information in about the specific sites.
Thank you.
Okay.
Ms. Hill?
Yes, Dr. Young, just a question on our summer school. For the elementary and middle, that's in person, and high school is virtual?
Yeah, high school is virtual,
Yes.
and elementary and middle are in face-to-face.
Okay.
And some of our high school activities, like our fine arts, that is face-to-face. And we also have some satellite sites like Georgia Tech, where we have some kids going over there.
And just off the top of your head, how many do we have enrolled?
I don't know how many we have enrolled, because I want to give you the answer on that when we start Monday, and then I can tell you exactly how many that we have.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, go ahead.
All right, the next thing is our Georgia Milestone spring testing for EOC and EOG. Those assessments have concluded, yay. What I want to share with you, for the end of course test, we had 9,000 students to take over 20,000 tests. And for our end of grade, we had 23,000 students in grades 3 to 8, took 140,000 tests. So we find that our kids take, for example, our 3rd, 4th, all 3 through 8 take elementary and middle school math and language arts. So you can see kids taking more than one test. And then we have our science and social studies as well. So we have a lot of tests that were administered. So far, we had minimum concerns about our testing. We have a robust infrastructure that allow us to have online testing to go very smoothly. Of course, when there are challenges, we address those challenges very quickly, and we work with the technology department and REAA department, as well as our schools, to ensure that those kinks are resolved as quickly as possible without interrupting the testing process. Information about our testing. We have some preliminary data, and it's going to speak in broad terms. We have seen some slight improvement in content areas. For more specific information, I'll share that with you as soon as the data are allowed to be released. But we have seen some improvements of grades 3 through 8, as well as in high school for our end of course tests. Any questions? Good.
Mrs. Draker?
Dr. Young, when we had our retreat a couple of months ago, you did a presentation on the MAP
Yes.
testing. How close, based
Very,
off
we
of the
just
standard
looked at it.
deviation?
Very close, very, very close.
So
The MAP is a very strong predictor about our future performance of our students. And we looked at that, just had a conversation about that at graduation. Very, very close. So
So will we see those results, or will that presentation be made to us to see what was presented during that meeting versus the actual results?
we can include that in our presentation.
Great,
Yes.
thank you.
Any other questions? All right. All right. And so our last portion of my presentation deals with the testing calendar. You had an executive summary to go along with that. And in the executive summary, there was a link that you could click on and it would bring up the 23-24 test calendar. So I hope you had a chance to look at it. I know Ms. Williams did, and we had a conversation about it. As you look at the assessment, be mindful that those assessments that are printed in bold or in that gray band, when we look at the table, those are mandatory. Those not optional. So we can't get around those. Those are by the State Department, and we must administer those assessments. And so very quickly for our elementary, of course, you can see the required assessments that starts with the GKIDS, the Access, the NAEP, the Georgia Alternative Assessment, the Access, and of course, the end of grade assessment. And so those are all required by the State Department. Also look at the grade band, so you can see which students are to participate in assessments. Those that are not in any grade band are those assessments that the district are administering. We are administering the AMIRA, again, that is replacing the DIBELS, an online version of that. That includes, someone asked me today, did we have any online resources for teaching kids to read? Well, AMIRA is that as for our kids in elementary schools. And so we'll be administering the AMIRA assessment that not only helps us understand where our students are in terms of reading or being ready to read, it also serves as our dyslexia screener. And it is a state-approved product. As of last week, we found that out. And so we'll be well prepared to meet the state guidelines for screening our students for dyslexia. Of course, there are much more to go with that, but we are at least prepared to administer the assessment. And then we have our MAP assessment that gives us the information that we need to help gauge our student progress and to make changes as we go along in our instruction and our instructional supports. Following that, you can continue to look at the assessments. You can see the middle school and the high schools. And high schools look crazy. They do, because they have in it the GMAS EOC mid-months, and that is required by the state. Maybe 1 or 2 kids per month take that, and that's required because the state says we must give students an opportunity to take the EOC if in case they missed it. And so we must give that opportunity all year long because it counts 20% of their grade. And so those are there to show you that they are required for the state. And then you have the L4GA schools. They have a lot of assessments on their calendar. We can remove those assessments if we get out of the grant. So those assessments in that blueprint are required. We cannot get around it. They're part of the grant. And if the only way that we can get out of those assessments is that we must give up the grant. And I know that we want to continue to use that grant to help improve our student literacy and ability to read. So, are there any questions?
Ms. Hill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dr. Young, just 2 brief questions. One, I know you indicated those in bold meant that those were mandatory, but I also know that some of it was in red.
That's my important one, my very, very important one. Those are the ones that come at the end of the school year. That's the GMAS. Okay.
And also, how long does the exams take? Does it take a half a day, a whole day? Is it a couple of hours? How much time does it take for these exams?
Okay. Each exam has a certain amount of time, from 70 minutes to 90 minutes. And so a school can set up its day to test in the morning time. So it may not be all physically testing, but the testing process itself for moving kids around, picking up materials, returning materials. So it's typically a half a day, but it's not necessarily where kids are sitting testing.
Am I correct? When I was reading the testing, it was one test every month?
Almost in terms of the high school, but it's not a lot of kids. It's just they're available for the high school. And for the other ones, it's almost that. It is, but again, look at the grade band so you can see which groups of students are testing. Because I may have kindergarten testing, let's just say August, I'm making this up, September, but the next test might be for third graders, okay? All right, so please look at both the dates, the assessment, and the grade band.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Are there any other questions?
Okay, if there are no other questions, may I invite the coordinators for language arts to join us and so they can make a presentation.
Good evening. This evening, the K-12 English Language Arts Department will provide updates regarding our K-12 goals, priorities, instructional resources, and professional learning opportunities for the 23-24 school year. Our district literacy goals focus on evidence-based teaching practices for literacy instruction and the use of district-provided English language arts instructional resources with fidelity. These goals will be measured by classroom observations, lesson plans, student work samples, and student achievement data. The K-12 English Language Arts Department has identified our priorities as highlighted by our district data and instructional observations. Our priorities will ensure that our educators K-12 receive professional learning opportunities targeting the foundational skills in reading, writing, and small group differentiated instruction, utilizing the adopted district resources. Additionally, our K-12 educators will receive site-based support to address instructional practices and guidance regarding utilizing the data to make data-driven decisions and address instructional needs. As shared previously, the K-12 English Language Arts Department adopted new instructional resources. These resources were implemented during the 2022-2023 school year. Our K-5 educators and scholars will continue to utilize HMH into reading to support core instruction during the literacy block. In addition to the HMH into reading, all K through third grade scholars will engage with Amira Learning to support the development of reading skills. Most recently, as stated by Dr. Young, Amira was approved by the state of the Georgia Department of Education as a dyslexia screener. We are happy to also share that we piloted this platform during this school year, the 2022-2023 school year. We look forward to implementing Amira K3 for all elementary schools. As detailed in the description in your executive summary, you will find more information about both of these instructional resources.
Secondary ELA is continuing to use the Amplify ELA at grades 6 through 8 and Springboard ELA at grades 9 through 12. The core instructional resources are grounded in the research and evidence-based practices that lead students to critical thinking and high-level written and oral communication. It is our commitment to continue to support our teachers and buildings through this implementation as we move into our second year of implementation. K-12 ELA's professional development opportunities will be centered around the following areas: pre-planning, ongoing teacher professional learning opportunities, administrator training, monthly unit cadres that lead teachers through unit planning support, and literacy and academic coach support. Details about specific offerings by grade band can be found in your executive summary. The K-12 English Language Arts team will provide site-based training to strengthen program implementation. We will continue to conduct classroom observations and use that data to assist teachers through lesson modeling and side-by-side support. Again, specific details about the support can be found in your executive summary. Thank you, and are there any questions?
Are there any questions, board members? Before you all sit down, based on your report here, are you going to do anything that is unique as far as you're saying that you're going to be doing lesson modeling based on observations? Since we have taken up these devices, and I don't know if they're going to be redistributed, it seems like people might be using books again. So have you all considered doing anything like, since we have seems like a pretty robust teaching and learning department, such as maybe, especially with us having a lot of new teachers, maybe doing like lesson plans that would help our teachers? I'm not going to continue to give my train of thought. Let me hear what you all are planning on doing.
So as a teaching and learning division, we are in adoption of a new instructional framework that is going to be uniform across content areas. With that instructional framework will come a uniform lesson plan template with guidance by content area of how to plan for instruction using that framework. So there will be that support that will be provided. Also, we will have opportunities with the district-led collaborative planning sessions to work with teachers as they think through how to use the instructional print resources, as well as from an instructional standpoint, how to integrate the digital resources, and for teachers, maximize the use of digital resources through on-demand opportunities. So we will try to pretty much kind of exercise and exhaust every medium and every format for training and support to include monitoring and feedback as well.
Okay, and so you're going to, do you think it's better to observe a new teacher and then give some feedback, or do you think it's better to teach a lesson first so that teacher can observe you and then you come back? What's your opinion on that?
So in our cycle of support, when we look at our pre-planning timeline, we are providing teachers an opportunity that will continue throughout the school year to receive support with their unit planning. So prior to the unit launching, at least 2 weeks minimum, we'll pull teachers together and provide them an opportunity to go through what that unit looks like and plan for that particular set of instruction. We also will utilize our support that we will be able to provide you our detailed support plan at the next meeting, as we put together a K-12 comprehensive plan, which does include a heavy focus on PD and what that will look like for teachers. We know that providing teacher support, be it new or veteran, it's always good, one, to survey teachers and see what they feel they need. But if you're new, sometimes you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And so, of course, modeling will be one of the heavy things that we will do as content coordinators, as well as our team, and then looking to see what other supports we can pull from our vendor partners to have them also come in and collaborate and support our teachers as well.
Okay, and this will be my last question. Will teachers be able to have their own planning time without like individual planning time, or are we still just gonna make people do group planning every day?
So I know that we're collaborating with the guidance of Dr. Young and our executive support to ensure that teachers do receive collaborative planning time with us guiding them through the planning, but also that way they're able to have additional time through extended planning to be able to plan their own individual lessons or work on the things that they need to for their classroom and for their scholars.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Ms. Cox?
Greetings, Madam Chair and Vice Chair, members of the board, Interim Superintendent Smith, and everyone present. This evening, we have two students with us here to describe the inaugural CCPS Travels trip to Washington, D.C., with a bonus stop in Philadelphia and New York. We were able to travel in April with 20 students, 2 parents, and 3 CCPS district personnel. Our tour company that we've been partnering with is EF Tours, and they provided us with a fantastic experience. Some of our, hopefully, class pictures, as our tour guide liked to say, he kept telling them, class pictures, they'll roll up in a minute. They will depict the landmarks and the experiences that the students received. You can also see them yourselves on the Instagram for CCPS Travels, if you want to go check those out. We brought 2 of our travelers tonight to describe their experience. So I'm going to begin with Michaela Choates-Jackson, who's a junior at Morrow High School.
Greetings, Madam Chair, Vice Chair, members of the board, Interim Superintendent Smith, and all present. My name is Michaela Choates-Jackson, and I had the pleasure of traveling with the inaugural CCPS travel group during spring break. On the Washington, D.C. and New York trip, I learned a lot about the landmarks we visited, as well as the states and cities that surround them. The chaperone taught us about laws, landmark court cases, and the importance of laws, including the origin of the Miranda rights. These lessons reinforced things that I learned during an AP government course that I took last year. And I liked how the chaperones were able to educate us outside of the classroom and still make it enjoyable. Thank you. Our tour guide educated us on the rich history and culture of the places that we traveled to while making sure that we all stayed engaged. He filled our heads with information, but still made sure we had a good time. The tour was a good experience, and I would recommend that every student had a similar one. Are there any questions?
I think everybody wants to know why we weren't allowed to chaperone that trip. Mr. Straker.
Ma'am, can you give me in your own words the experience you had at, say, like, did you go to the Statue of Liberty? Statue of Liberty, were you?
We did.
Okay, tell me what your experience was like and what you.
It was a fun experience. I feel like so I've been to Washington before, but even though I have been to Washington before, I still had fun. I learned a lot of new things that I feel like I wouldn't have learned if I wasn't on a school trip. And at the Statue of Liberty, the only way I could describe it is cold. So we packed for Washington, we packed too hot. For New York, we packed we didn't have enough clothes. So it was hot in Washington, cold in New York, and we were all just we felt like Georgians. We were from Georgia. The weather, we just didn't pack correctly, but it was fun.
So New York was a big difference from Georgia.
So I kind of grew up in Atlanta, and down there, up there, technically, a lot of people are a little bit more rooted than they are down here. So with that being said, it's not too bad up there. I feel like a lot of people are a bit dramatic about how rude people are, but it was still cool. Like somebody might bump into you and look at you like you're the problem, but you can it's okay.
Thank you.
Ms. Hill.
I just want to say I'm very excited that you had a great time, but can you share something about your Supreme Court experience? Did y'all get to go into the building and walk the halls and meet anyone?
Okay.
Did y'all get into any of the courts?
So I know we went to the Capitol. I had fun there. And it was I don't know about the Supreme Court really. I kind of zoned out a little bit, but I did have fun. Like the Capitol, we got this, the architecture in there, beautiful. It's wonderful. Like you look up, you just see a whole bunch of half-dressed people up in the ceiling flying around. It's pretty cool. As far as Supreme Court, stuff like that, I had just finished AP government. I was not worried about learning any more Supreme Court cases. I was sick of the judicial, all of that. So it's I was there during when they were talking about the Supreme Court and stuff. I felt like I got all the knowledge I needed back in the classroom though about that one.
I may let Ariel answer that question about the Supreme Court. She was the one who answered the best question about Marbury versus Madison.
About how that was the first court case, that was the first time we talked about judicial review. Yeah, so the Supreme Court, I believe it was, we really got to see a lot of statues. Sorry. We got to see a lot of the statues. Or it could be confusing with the Capitol, but like it all sort of connected together. But inside the Supreme Court, they had different statues of different people that were very influential throughout the United States history. For example, Georgia had their own statues and different ones that were commissioned by the Capitol, as well as ones that were already there. So that was really fun to see, and especially learning about the law, because the tour guide, he made sure to tell us about these are certain people, and if we asked him, he told you things. Like I remember I asked about a civic statue from the Treasury, and he taught us about the second most famous treasurer outside of like Alexander Hamilton, how he started like the National Bank, and right after him, he told us about that the next person, and it was a lot of information that was very important. Because I remember the Supreme Court, we did not go on the inside. I believe we passed right by it because we were running out of time at that point. But the Supreme Court, it was very grand, it was very elegant, and architecture, of course, is very important. Anything else?
Anything, Ms. Cooper?
Could we get her name in the school? I don't think she had a chance to introduce herself. She was just handed the microphone.
Hi, my name is Ariel Greenway. I just graduated from Elite Scholars Academy. Yes. Say again?
I think, were you going to present something?
Yes.
I think if we haven't allowed them to present, they have a presentation and we're asking questions. So I think she's gonna present. That's why. She's gonna present, I think.
Okay. Greetings, Madam Chair, Vice Chair, members of the board, Interim Superintendent Smith, and all present. I enjoyed being able to participate in Clayton County's Washington, D.C. and New York trip. I love seeing all the astonishing landmarks and historic sites. My favorite part of the trip was going to the Natural History Museum. The dinosaur fossils were very cool and very interesting, and it was very interesting to learn about the scientists who were able to collect research on the bones. I also was able to learn a bit of geology from studying the different stones and minerals that the museum had on display. And then furthermore, New York was just as memorable as we got to see both the Statue of Liberty and Ellis Island. Both the Statue of Liberty and Ellis Island tie into the United States to different countries, such as the Statue of Liberty was a gift from France, and Ellis Island was the largest immigration hub in the 19th and 20th centuries. These ideals of unity and harmony especially became more apparent as we would often hear multiple languages being spoken at once as people walked by. And it was especially incredible to see how the United States was truly the melting pot that the history books depict. Thank you. Any questions?
Any other questions?
Which school and what major are you gonna have in college?
I'll be going to the University of Georgia and majoring in mechanical engineering.
Fantastic.
Any other questions? I think that our first presenter, when you mentioned about the rudeness or whatever, the New Yorker, since we had a New Yorker over here to ask the question, it's also quite dirty there as well. So, right. But anyway, I thank you all. We have I think you all had a great experience. I think too, students are kind of limited now anyway when you're visiting the nation's capital because they pretty much don't let you in places where, years ago you could go into the White House, you could do all those types of things, but because our citizens don't know how to act, things are quite limited, but we appreciate it. I'm glad. Thank you, Ms. Cox, for having some students come and give us some their perception and a great presentation. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Ramona Bivens will provide a budget update.
Good evening, Madam Chair. Can y'all hear me? Can you hear me? No.
move this around here. How about now? Is that better? Or do I need to hold it in my hand? I don't know how to speak loud. No, I'm just kidding. I'm gonna hold it in my hand. I'll just turn with this. All right. Good evening, Madam Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the board, Interim Superintendent Dr. Smith, colleagues, and community. This evening, I will be presenting the Superintendent's fiscal year 2024 proposed budget. As you know, we met with most of you, if not all of you, earlier in the month. So I just want to go over pretty much what we talked then, but just do it in a public setting. Okay, let's see how this is gonna work. Oops, the presentation. Okay. And don't be mad that it's 30 slides. I have a lot to say. That's it. Okay, that's it. Thank you. So first, I want to talk about the property taxes for tax year 2023 that will support the fiscal year 2024 budget. This slide shows the tax digest from last year for 2022 and compared to this year's of 2023. As you can see, residential values were up 25% from $5,535,401,101. This year's is $6,943,456,815, and that's a $1.4 billion increase in residential values. The total personal property, where it says digest total, that's personal property. As you can see, that is up to a little over $2 billion for this year, or a 20% increase. In our gross digest, that includes the personal property plus motor vehicles, mobile homes, heavy-duty equipment, and public utilities. That is up $2,089,744,413. After the exemptions, we have a net increase in the digest property values of $1,941,175,040. And that will generate, with our millage rate at 20 mills, that would generate an additional $38 million than the digest did last year. This shows a comparison of the millage rates around other districts in the metro area. And I used 2022's last year's numbers because we were unable to get numbers for this year, but just so you can have an idea of how much one mill generates for Clayton County. So based on last year's property values, one mill generated $9,380,000. Compared to Atlanta, their millage rate, of course, is at 20.5. It's a half a mil higher than ours. Theirs generates a little over $42 million. Cobb is at 18.9, and even though their millage rate is lower, that one mill generates a little over $45 million. And so this slide was just to show the millage rates at the different school districts in our area, to show we're kind of in line with everyone. Atlanta, DeKalb, Atlanta and DeKalb have a millage rate for the M&O that's higher than ours. However, 3 of those districts have a bond millage rate, which we do not have. We rely on SPLOST to fund our capital needs. Fayette has a 0.85, so that puts their total millage rate at 20 mills, the same as ours. Gwinnett, is at 1.45. That puts their total mill at 20.65, which is a little higher than ours. And Henry County has the highest at 23.628 when you add the 3.628 mills to their millage rate. This slide shows, we also talked about, well, what would happen if we were to reduce the millage rate? If, based on this year's digest, 1 mill is equal to $11,321,989. If we were to reduce our millage rate by 1 mill, we would have to make reductions in that amount because that would generate that much less revenue. So I wanted to show that as well. So next, we're going to talk about the general fund proposed budget, revenues and expenditures. And our projected beginning fund balance is $179,639,835. We're projecting $641,724,250 in revenues, and the same in expenditures for us to have a balanced budget where we don't have to use any of our fund balance for the general fund. So our projected ending fund balance on June 30th of 2024 is the same as the beginning of this year on July 1, $179,639,835.
Ms. Bivens, before you go to the
Yes, ma'am.
next, because I know yours is gonna be kind of lengthy. So hold on a minute, Mr. Christmas had a question.
If you go back to the millage rate comparison, Ms. Bivens.
This one?
Yeah. You telling me 1 mill in Fayetteville is only generating $6 million versus 9 in Clayton?
That is correct. Yes, sir.
That is correct.
Yes. I said the same thing when I saw it. I'm like, that's not right. But I looked at their property values. Their property values are actually a little lower than ours. I was surprised by that as well. Okay.
Keep in mind the size of the school system and the county as well, Mr. Christmas.
Which I did include the student counts on here, which we were able to pull off of Georgia Department of Education's website, and the population for each one of those as well. Okay. So the general fund budget, let's see, we were here. Projected revenues. So we're projecting $224,075,406 in our local property taxes. Other local sources, which includes our TABT, which is our title ad valorem tax. And for those of you that have been in Georgia for a long time, remember when you bought a car, you had to pay this birthday tax every year, is what I called it. On your birthday, you had to pay taxes. We were paying, what, $100, $200, $300, depending on the value of your vehicle. Now, when you go and purchase a vehicle, whether it's new or used, you pay a tax, TABT tax, and the state sends that to the municipalities, counties, and school systems instead of us getting that birthday tax now. So that's that funding source. And then, of course, state funding, $386,660,384. That's where our QBE money is. We have a little federal funding of $690,000, and then other general fund grants. Those are the grants that we get, other state and local grants that we have to include in the general fund. So that's what that $6,821,380 in that line item, and that is the number that I gave earlier, the total $641,724,250 for our revenue. And as I stated when we met, I like to show pictures. So this picture just shows the pie of all of the money, of all the revenues, but this shows the sources of that revenue. So as you can see, the majority of our funds come from state funding at 60%, and local property tax is the next highest source of revenue at 35%, with 4% at local, 1% at other local grants, and then 0.1 of the federal funding. Before I talk about expenditures, I want to talk about some of the challenges that we encountered as we were trying to do this budget. So as we all know, inflation has hit everybody, not just our personal pockets, but businesses and school systems as well. So some of the changes we have, changes in salaries, health insurance, fuel, utilities, supplies, and as I stated, inflation. And one of the board members asked if we could turn these arrows to go up because inflation is going up. We tried, but we couldn't. So the major changes, again, we had increases in our utilities. We've all heard Georgia Power increased our utilities in January, and they're going up again. So that is reflected in this budget. Supplies and equipment increases due to inflation. Again, cost of just doing business, supplies and materials, equipment have gone up. Fuel prices have increased about 34%. And then we are absorbing some of that CARES funding cost that we had in the last 2 years. So on the salary side, on the general fund side, we have about $17.8 million in increases. That includes the certified staff, a $2,000 increase. This was included in the governor's budget. The school nurses, a 5.1% increase as included in the governor's budget, and then a 5.1% increase for bus drivers as well. We've also included proposing a 3% cost of living adjustment for those employees that are on pay grade 29 and below. And those employees include paraprofessionals, custodians, bus drivers, various technicians, school secretaries, school bookkeepers, library media clerks, and school nutrition workers, and a whole slew of other positions. It was about 5 pages to name, so it takes care of some of those lower paid employees. Anybody on pay grade 30 and above will not receive that 3% cost of living adjustment.
Ms.
Also-
Bivens,
yes.
also, we need to point out that as far as certified staff, that pretty much we're giving that to everyone, but what the governor gave us doesn't cover.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, I'm getting ready to go there next.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
But before I go there, I wanted to say that also what's not included in the general fund, but it's in our special revenue funds because it's being funded by special ed funds, is a $3,000 one-time payment to our special ed teachers and a $2,000 one-time bonus to special ed parapros that will be done in August. So I wanted to make sure that is included in this budget under special revenue funds when we get to all funds later in the presentation. But as Madam Chair stated, the state does not fund all of our salary increases of all of our teacher salaries. In this slide, we included this because it shows Clayton County's average salary by scale. So for the BT4, which is your provisional, and T4 and T5, and your T6 and 7, those are your clear certifications. As you can see, our average is higher than the state's average, and you can see the difference there. So whenever the state gives an increase, they only give that increase on the state portion of that. So we have to absorb some of that because also they don't fund all of our teachers, which I'll show that later on in the slide as well when we talk about our health insurance increase. I have some numbers on how many teachers we have and how much they're funding, and that's the same number that we get funding for our teacher salaries as well. And then graph, the chart on there just shows again, I like pictures, and it gives you an idea. You can see just how big that gap is visually, a visual for that. So this is the health insurance change. Many know, many don't know that the state health insurance increased. The district's portion or the share of that increase went from $11,340 per year per employee to $18,960 per year per employee. That's an increase of $7,060 per year for each employee that has health insurance. The teachers' increase started on January 1 of this year, so the full amount of the increase is included in this budget for our certified staff. For all other staff, the state has made provisions where it didn't hit us so hard, where this year, the first year is $3,000 per year for the first 2 years, with the final third year being $1,000.20 to get to the full increase.
Hold on a moment, Ms.
Yes,
Bivens.
ma'am.
Ms. Baker.
I just want to highlight, we're talking about an increase for benefits that are probably not going to increase of $7,000, over $7,000 per person.
Yes, per year.
Okay, so when y'all say, oh, well, the state gave, the state taketh. So I just needed to get that.
So here's what the state taketh. On this slide, it shows that for this year, our current fiscal year, our employee health insurance was $46.1 million. For 2024, for us, it's going to be $89.3 million, but I want to point out, had they not made provisions for that incremental increase for all of our other employees, that number would have been $100 million. So it's a $43.1 million increase. Certified staff, we have 4,238 certified personnel. The state is only reimbursing us for 3,315. They're only going to reimburse us $62.8 million of that 89.3, leaving the district to absorb $27 million. So that additional $38 million in tax revenue, we needed to help offset this. This shows the general fund by function, which is instruction, people services, educational media services, general admin, business services, school admin, student transportation. This shows $380 million is being spent in the instructional area. That's where the majority of that $634 million is going, to direct instruction. This next slide shows, and I don't know why it's like that, shows a better picture, but I will, as you can see, the biggest piece of the pie in blue is for instruction. The next largest piece of that pie is in school administration and people services, and student transportation, central support services, all of those areas and improvement of instructional services. All of those areas have a direct impact on instruction in those students in the classroom. So 65.9% of this budget is going to areas that have a direct impact in the classroom instruction. This shows the general fund expenditures by object, which is salaries, benefits, communications, other expenditures, property, purchase professional services, supplies and equipment, and travel. And again, as you can see, salaries and benefits is the majority of our budget, of our expenditures. So that is where most of our funds is going, for the salaries and benefits of our teachers. And then the next largest area is in other purchase services. And then we have supplies and equipment and purchase professional services. And this slide shows again a visual of those areas with the percentages. 60% of the salary of the expenditures are in salaries, 27% in benefits, with the remaining in all of the other areas, with 5% going to supplies and 3% in purchase professional services. So that was the general fund budget, which represented a balanced budget. Next, we're going to talk about the consolidated budget, or what we like to call our budget for all funds, which includes your general fund, your special revenue funds, your enterprise funds, and your capital projects funds. So our beginning fund balance for all funds is $219,043,726. Our projected revenue is $1,200,981,589. Our projected expenditures are $1,225,875,125. That shows that our expenditures exceed our revenues by $24,893,536, and that's for all funds, with the ending fund balance of $194,150,190. Now that $24,893,000, the majority of that is in school nutrition. School nutrition has a pretty healthy fund balance, and we are required to use some of that funding. So we budgeted about $22.5 million of that is for school nutrition, with the other is some money out of SPLOST fund balance for some of the projects that's budgeted for this year. So we have a balanced budget, but we are having to use that money for school nutrition, not out of general fund. So I want to make that clear to everyone. So this shows the budget as I just discussed. So the first column is general fund, as we just went through. The second column is our proposed special revenue fund budget. And you see the majority of our funding there is under federal funds. It's $164,684,882 is the majority of that, with some money from the state, some other local and other funding, which would be transfers in from the general fund or other funds. So our total revenue for special revenue fund is $200,296. And as you see on the expenditure side, the expenditures are the same. So for for special revenue funds, we have to spend whatever revenue we have in. So we have a balanced budget for that fund as well. Under the capital projects fund, you see we have a total revenue of $344,010,000, with $66 million of that coming from our SPLOST funds. $10 million on the other local is from the county for the convocation center. And then we have $15 million from the state for our reimbursement that the state provides as far as our capital funds. The line that I really want to focus on, though, is the other funding, the $253 million. The majority of that is for the bonds that we're going to be issued that was approved in the SPLOST ELOST resolution, where we can issue bonds for the first time and pay it back using the SPLOST revenue. So that's one of the reasons why earlier on when we talked about the millage rates at other counties where they had a bond millage rate, that is how the taxpayers there have to take on the cost of their capital projects. Here in Clayton County, we're fortunate to have ELOST, where not only do those of us that shop in the county, that live in the county and shop in the county, pay that 1 cent sales tax. Also, the people that come through that airport, the world's busiest airport, sitting here in Clayton County, we get tax, that penny tax, we get money from that as well. So the ELOST takes some of the burden off of taxpayers and the taxpaying citizens in the county in funding our capital projects. So I wanted to focus that's where there is. Normally, we wouldn't have that big a number there, but I wanted to make sure that everyone understood what that other funding was. And on the expenditure side, we have $344,010,000 budgeted there for the expenditures. And on the enterprise fund, you see other local revenue of $7,828,000, federal $34,568,000, and then the other funding $22,524,011. That is where we are taking the money out of fund balance for school nutrition. So our total revenue for our enterprise funds is $65,940,579, with our expenditures being the same. And then on the total FY24 proposed budget consolidated, again, total revenue is $1,225,875,125. And our expenditures are the same. We have $1,219,53,745. And then other general fund expenditures, $6,821,380, and that's for the general fund grants that we had to include. So we have a balanced budget at $1,225,875. $875,125. And again, this is a visual to show that the general fund is the largest fund of all of our funds at $641 million. With our construction capital projects funds, it's the second largest. Normally, that is not the case. However, because we have that $200-something million bond, that makes this a little larger than it normally is. And then special revenue and enterprise funds. This again just shows the consolidated budget that we're going to be asking the board to tentatively approve later. The general fund, $641,724,250. The special revenue fund, special revenue fund, $174,200,296. Capital projects funds, $344,010,000, and enterprise fund, $65,940,579. And this shows the sources of the revenue as well on this slide. So on this one, you see that the majority of our funding, let me get to my cheat notes. Because that one it's not clear. So 34% is state funding with 21% other funding, 19% local property taxes. And then federal, we did federal funding, local sales taxes, 6%. This shows the expenditures, where the other slide showed the revenues. So this is also by function, as I showed for the general fund, by instruction, people services, improvement of instructional services, general admin, the same categories that we discussed for the general operating fund for each one of these funds. So as you can see, the total expenditures are the same. And again, this shows that 35% of the total budget is going to instruction, with 28% to facilities acquisition and construction services. And just a reminder that normally that wouldn't be the case, but again, we had that $200 million that's skewing our number for that category. Then we have 11% in people services, and then the balance in maintenance and operations, educational media services, school administration, and central support services. This shows the consolidated budget by object, as I showed for the general fund. We had 35% of that is going to salaries, 30% to land and buildings. Again, the disclaimer that we have that expenditure in there for the buildings. And then with 60% to benefits, 11% to purchase professional services. Then we have 3% for supplies, equipment, and 4% to other purchase professional services. And just one more time, this is the budget that we're asking the board to approve tentatively adopt a total of $1,225,875,125. Once the board does a tentative approval, we are required to have 2 public hearings to provide the public an opportunity to provide input on the budget. Excuse me. These hearings have been scheduled for Monday, June 12th at 5:30 p.m. and Wednesday, June 14th at 11 a.m. If you recall, we were going to do one next Monday, but the paper did not publish our ad, even though we got it to them on time. So we had to change that date to these 2 dates, which still gets us in time for the final adoption on Monday, June 26th, during the regular board work session. Also, those public hearings will be held here in the boardroom on at those dates and times.
Repeat.
Also, hopefully, finally, I hope we should have a digest by then, so we have a better idea on where the property values are and the property taxes as well. So that concludes, ma'am.
Repeat the dates again.
The
for
dates
those hearings.
for the hearings, yes, ma'am. Monday, June 12th at 5:30 p.m.
Okay.
And Wednesday, June 14th at 11 a.m. And also the budget will be available. It should be available now. It wasn't before I came over earlier, but the budget will be available online on our website for the public to view our budget document. And that's the end of my presentation. I'd be happy to entertain any questions or comments.
Are there any questions, board members? Please be reminded that we will have those budget hearings. We do not need a quorum, but please let me know if you can be in attendance, because I don't think it would look good if we don't have anybody sitting up here to listen. So let me know your schedules.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bivens. At this time, we'll get an update on safety and security from Dr. Renaud Walker.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, board members, Interim Superintendent Dr. Smith, colleagues, and community members. You received the presentation regarding the safety and security updates. However, I do want to provide you with a short snippet of our school year this past year, and just to give you insight on what our stats that we collected. First, I want to thank Dr. Smith. I want to focus on the golf cart security. This was a proactive initiative set up by Dr. Smith, where we had exterior security patrol as well as our own patrol using golf carts to secure the exterior of our school grounds. And this right here is a visual of the golf carts, or some of the golf carts we had securing our school grounds. So I wanted to just make sure I thank Dr. Smith for that proactive initiative. We were hearing about a lot of things occurring around the country, and we just thought it was very important that we provided a proactive means of making sure we secure our properties. With that being said, then I'm going to go straight into some of our stats. And one of the most important stats I wanted to discuss was the second half of the year weapons totals. And with that being said, we did, for January, or the month of January, we had a small increase in weapons being located on school grounds. We went up from 5 to 8. In February, we went from 11 to 12. However, in March, we had a noticeable decrease in weapons being located on school grounds. From last year, March of 2022, we had 24 weapons on school grounds in March of 2022. This past year, we only had 6. And in April of last year, we had 9 weapons located on school grounds. Let me make sure I go forward. Okay. 9 weapons on school grounds. And this past year, for 2023, we only had 6, which was a decrease of 33%. So I could tell you now from January 2023 to now, and we haven't collected the stats or data for May as of yet, we've only had 49 weapons last year, 2022, and only 32 this year, which was a decrease of 35%. But what I do want to focus on also is there are 10 months of school. So since the beginning of August to now, we've only had from the month of August to now, we've only had 2 months where we had increases in weapons on school grounds. And those particular months are the months I discussed, which was January of 2023, which we had a total plus of 3, and February, we had a total plus of 1. With that being said, I could tell you right now that total weapons located on school grounds thus far this school year total at about 56 weapons. Last year, we had almost 100 weapons, which basically means we're almost 50% less than we were last year. So we did, along with school administrators, safety and security personnel, proactive focuses by the interim superintendent, as well as you all assisting us in ordering or purchasing the weapon detection devices. I think we had a super school year, and hopefully we can continue to move forward with that. Lastly, I do want to point out that this past school year, we located 18 weapons on school ground, or 18 guns on school grounds. However, I'm proud to say that only 8 of those weapons are real or were real weapons. Of course, by law, there are certain standards we have to label certain things as guns on school grounds. But with that being said, we only had 8 real guns on school grounds. Only 3 of those weapons made it into a school. And with that being said, none of the weapons that made it into the schools came through the weapon detection devices. They were always students trying to find other ways to enter the school without having to go through the weapon detection devices. So with that being said, we have reduced the total number of weapons on school grounds this past year. And with that being said, are there any questions?
Ms. Williams.
You answered part of my question. Madam Chair, I wanted to know the 56 weapons you kept saying on the grounds. I wanted to ask you how many were actually in the school versus like in the parking lot.
Well,
But
I
you
answered
answered
part of
some
the
of it,
question,
yeah.
which was the real weapons.
Right.
We have located tasers, knives, and other smaller weapons on school grounds, which adds to that total. However, only out of 56 of those weapons, only 18 were guns, and only 8 was real weapons or real guns.
And only 2 was actually in the school?
Only 3 made it actually into the school.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Hill.
Yes, thank you, Chief Walker. That was very thorough, and I appreciate that. I know in the beginning of the school year, there was a lot of concern about fighting and other incidents. Can you give us a brief overview? Have there been a decrease in that, and are we doing better with the safety of our scholars when it comes to the fighting?
Yes, ma'am. I could tell you if I didn't put those stats up. However, in January of 2023, as well as February of 2023, we saw our highest numbers of fights on school grounds. But with that being said, as we approach the end of February, going into March and April, we had real decreases in fights on school grounds. And again, we can thank the proactive measures about bringing extra security staff on. Now, we do plan on trying to hire staff, and we are looking good in that particular area of having our own staff. But having extra security staff, school administrators, as well as our safety and security staff being more vigilant, I think that assisted us in reducing the number of fights on school grounds as well.
Ms. Baker.
I'm going to go back to the guns for a second, and I'm glad they're down. Don't get me wrong, I'm completely glad they're down, but the truth is that minors cannot buy guns legally. So are there adults that are being held responsible at the same time that these young people are going in to see the courts? Or do we know?
I'm sorry, I couldn't even hear you.
I said that no minors can legally buy guns. So that means they're having an adult get them these guns. And I want to know, do we have a thing in place that the adults are held responsible besides just the students?
Yes, ma'am. What is going on is when we conduct our investigations, our investigation units are very thorough. We try to go to the beginning. We don't stop right there at just the kid having possession of the weapon. Of course, we try to, if a parent is responsible or if the weapon is not secured the way it needs to be secured, then we're looking to obtain warrants and charging adults for contributing to those crimes that are caused by teenagers.
Back to the question that Ms. Hill asked about fighting too. I think you're providing data regarding fighting, but I think that the board needs to understand that you probably wouldn't have the correct number of fights anyway, because probably the number that you have is when it actually ends up involving safety and security. That really the fight data would really come from our principals more so than from safety and security. And we can decrease the numbers of fights in the building with the improving the culture of the school. If we have our principals that are making sure that their staff is visible within the schools, changing classes, all those types of things, setting standards and expectations for their students. And the fact that even as I've asked every year for us to go through those handbooks and make sure we have a discussion with our students about the proper discipline in the buildings, as well as dealing with having those conversations with parents about discipline in our building. I think that would, decrease the amount of fighting. But, let's just be real. Every day, we see situations throughout other school districts, even as well as ours. And as you said, Chief Walker, I want to thank Dr. Smith also for those golf carts, because I look at social media and I know certain neighborhoods, I won't call those names. I look at that Nextdoor app and, they're always complaining about mainly the high schoolers getting, coming off the property. And I'm glad that we have those golf carts. So people are actually going around the exterior of the school and making certain that our students are in the buildings where they need to be at. So we do appreciate you, because the year started off rough.
Yes,
Miss
definitely.
Williams and I, we would be laughing when we see cars going in a certain direction. We knew where they were going to. And, you know, with our schools and just all of the fight pages and everything. And I just wish that we could do something about the way we're parenting, the way we're setting the standard within our school building. And I just wish people weren't so quick to resort to violence, because it's been, I know for you all, it's been a rough year. So thank
Yes.
you thank you so much for what you all have done this year.
And thank you, Ms. Gorey. And thank you for acknowledging that one of the things I do like to thank our department for is our numbers are slightly skewed as it relates to fights, because we're not trying to criminalize every student for getting into a physical altercation. We try to de-escalate, and we try to use other manners, and as well as using administrative staff in order to take care of situations rather than charging every student. If we charged every student, then of course our numbers definitely would be through the roof.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief Walker.
Thank you.
Technology update, Mr. Rod Smith.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the board, Dr. Smith, Superintendent. I've submitted for your review two things. One is a executive summary that speaks to the issue that we've had over the school year relative to Chromebook inventory. One of the things that addresses is how we're going to, as a district, try to mitigate for that. We developed a cross-functional team that will start meeting within the next couple of weeks to address that issue and see if we could do a better job. Additionally, I do have a slide deck, but the slide deck is very brief. What's more important is in that executive summary, I broke down some numbers with percentages that explain where we are as a district with our current inventory. I would also like to say that going back to the original presentation that we made to the board relative to the inventory, those numbers are down. When you think about the fact that we started out in the pandemic, and I think the number is somewhere around 57,000 devices, we've only lost a little bit over 10% of those devices. And that's pretty good relative to other school districts around the country that are having the same issue. The other document that I submitted was just a basic technology update that explained or gave an update on some of the highlights that the technology department has had over this past school year. I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Do we have any questions or comments? Ms. Baker?
I'm just trying to think of ways that we can keep a hold of them before we get to the end of the year. I know some of the schools allow the kids to take them home over Christmas break. Maybe we should be considering picking them all up by Christmas break, or just doing an adjustment, because I had a parent call me saying that they turned in their device, but it was somebody else's name. So maybe we need to do checks throughout the years to make sure that and I'll be honest, I took home somebody else's iPad one night and ended up with the police at my door. So I'm not asking for the police at the door, but like I said, it's something simple that you just grab the one in front of you and you think it's yours and it's not. And I don't want anybody to be accused of stealing something when they're not. But just some way of doing that throughout the.
Yeah, so one of the things we realized when at the beginning of the pandemic, we rolled that out so quick that we didn't have time to establish some procedures, and with the cross-functional team, and that is a cross-functional team with many stakeholders, including principals, staff members, from the teaching and learning team, from the technology team as well, to see if we could come up with some better processes. One of the root causes is trying to make sure that we do a better job of doing some spot checks relative to making sure that the students have the Chromebooks. And I know Dr. Young is working with her team and some of my staff, as well as, how do we do a better job of ensuring the students are using them for instructional purposes, as opposed to having them just down. And because a lot of the way that we found out that some of the devices weren't being used was they don't phone home, they don't check in. When that device gets turned on, it attaches to the network. It lets our inventory system know that device is still in our inventory. When they go 30 or 60 days, we can only assume at that point, or did only assume at that point, that those devices were missing. We're going to go back and try to address that with those intermediate spot checks once a week. We haven't established that yet. That's going to get determined by the cross-functional team. So I'd be happy if Dr. Smith wants us to bring that information back to the board at some point on our findings.
Mr. Christmas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Smith, I had a problem with the Chromebooks in the first place. I asked that we get an iPad so we can track this better. I know that's not your fault, but I hope this cross-functional team that you guys are putting together don't bring me back these kind of numbers next year about these Chromebooks, because $3 million and $3,332,000 in lost and stolen and broken Chromebooks makes no sense if we're going to continue to do this yearly. And so we need to find a better way to, and I know I read the report, I had a cross-functional team, we're going to try to put the gadget, some kind of gadget in it to trace them, but we got to do better. This is utterly ridiculous. And it's not your fault.
No, I agree with you, sir. I totally agree. And that's one of the things we're trying to do is we really want to make it a community awareness issue, because this accountability across the board is parents, students, teachers, principals, leaders. It's a community accountability.
So what are we doing? This cross-functional team, when this take place next year, how are we holding people accountable from this point forward? Because we can't continue to do this.
I think out of that cross-functional team, we'll have recommendations on how we can hold the people, how we can hold everyone accountable, including parents who, when we submit a report to a parent that says your child has lost a device, right? How do we get that money back? That's one of the things that we're trying to adjust now. How do we hold those parents and students accountable for when we lose those kind of devices that total the amount of money that you just referenced?
Yeah, like I said, I'm not directing this at you. I'm just a little frustrated because in the initial conversation, I thought we shouldn't have got Chromebooks, but that's just my opinion. And I think we got to do a much better job, and I hope we don't have these numbers next year.
And I agree 100%, but I will tell you this, in defense of our school district, I think we're doing a much better job than other school districts. And that doesn't excuse the amount of money, but I think we are doing a much better job than other school districts, in our surrounding metro.
Ms. Hill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And you did address my question, but I just want to reiterate for clarification purposes, the not used for 60 days for having approximately 6,530 Chromebooks not identified. Am I hearing you correctly that you're not certain that they're damaged and lost? You're just saying that these people may not have logged on, and that's something that the cross-function team will be working on?
That is correct. And that number is not that number now because we've collected them all. So we tried to update the report prior to coming to the meeting, but you're right. When those devices don't show up for 60 days, we make an assumption that they're either lost, stolen, or damaged, or really lost or stolen. That's not always true. So we have to do a better job of getting schools, principals, teachers to do a spot check, maybe once a week, twice a week. Again, we haven't established that yet. That's what's going to come out of that cross-functional team.
Thank you so much, and I look forward to learning more about how you guys address this.
You're welcome.
Mr. Striker.
Mr. Smith, just three things. Number one, I did hear you say that that's about average, about 10% of a loss is about average nationwide.
Nationwide, yes, sir.
Nationwide, right? And we're kind of like on the lower end of that nationwide number, am I correct?
I think we're doing a much better job than we thought we were when we reported this the first time. And yes, I would agree that we're doing a little bit better average-wise compared to other large districts our size nationally, not just in the metro.
Gotcha. And the next thing is, from my experiences with other districts, when a Chromebook is lost and reported to authorities, we can file an insurance claim on that. Am I correct?
That's an excellent point. So the Chromebooks that have been identified as stolen, we have insurance for those, and any student who brings, a parent who brings us a legitimate police report, those devices are covered by the insurance that we purchased for that kind of activity.
So we won't necessarily take a financial hit when that insurance claim is paid.
We don't.
Okay, and lastly, do we have any kind of contract with the families where there's some kind of notification that if they don't return the Chromebook, they'd be financially responsible for it?
So we do have something currently, but that's going to get updated with the cross-functional. The challenge with that is just the overall accountability. Some parents just refuse to.
Right. Yeah. But it's still documented.
Yes, sir.
They're financially
Yes, sir.
responsible for that.
Yes, sir.
All right. Good job, sir.
Thank you.
Ms. Williams.
I don't have a question on most of your statement. I remember when my son was elementary school, I had to get a paper from the media specialist to ask me that I want my child to check out a book if I felt like he's responsible for it. So I had to sign off on that whether he could or not, and I always said no because he wasn't responsible. So maybe the parents can sign a paper saying, does your child need a Chromebook? A lot of these kids have Chromebooks, some don't, but maybe make the parent come and say whether their child need it or not, and then sign out and then get it.
Well, originally at the beginning of the pandemic, we didn't explicitly tell parents that they could opt out, but a parent, based on their own judgment, could opt out. But during the pandemic, there was no other way for that student to receive that instruction. So it wouldn't have been a good thing.
A lot of them have computers at home. We assume some don't, but a lot of them,
this
majority
is
of them
true.
do.
Yeah, I accept that.
But I just want to say thank you.
Lastly, I'm just gonna say, we have a dependence upon devices. We taught children before without devices. And so now we're just dependent on them. We have them, some of them are just taking them back and forth. And as you said, you have some people that aren't even signing in for 60 days because probably you may not have been an assignment. So you have them responsible for something. And, everybody's just dependent upon these devices. As Ms. Williams stated, a lot of parents have their own devices. I think we should look at maybe if we're going to have these lessons using the devices, then maybe we don't give them to everyone. Maybe we give them to those students that really need it. But I think that probably everybody could purchase their own device because these people that say they don't have one, they got one of these. They got the latest brand, and I think that people need to start save up your money over the summer. If we're going to use these computers, they're pretty cheap anyway, and let's start being responsible. Because initially, we were talking about having the devices because we didn't even anticipate the pandemic. We were just trying to have them in the schools. And then everyone became dependent upon them. I just really want some people to go back. I want to see some kids do this for a change instead of this. Because I think all these devices that's why people want to fight with them. People aren't social, they don't interact. Even when they're sitting at the same table, they're on these phones instead of having a conversation with a person. And I wish that we would get off that dependency. Mr. Striker, are you back again?
Yeah, just one more. Mr. Smith, so that this doesn't come back to haunt me, because I'm hearing a lot of things here, and I'm used to it coming back a year from now, and a different story would come up. These devices that are being given to the children, they're preloaded with the applications in which the children have to use. They may not necessarily have that access with their own personal computers. Am I correct?
That's true. They are configured to what we call the Google console, where when they log in with I don't want to sound all technical, but they have a single sign-on where they log in and all the applications that they've been rostered for appear on that device at that time. So we would not be able to manage individual devices for students who brought those devices from home.
Ms. Baker.
I'm gonna make this quick. If a device has not been turned on for 30 to 60 days, shouldn't their teacher know that homework's not being turned in? I'm just saying, to me, if a child has not logged onto a computer in 30 to 60 days, somebody's not turning in some kind of work. And that should be the first flag of Johnny hasn't turned in anything in 15 days. We need to figure out where his device is.
Well, what I would say is with Dr. Smith's leadership and Dr. Young coming on board, I think we're addressing that now from twofold. One is the cross-functional team to address the inventory issue and the accountability issue for devices, and that's where technology plays a role. And then with Dr. Young's team, looking at the instructional practices that happen in the classroom every day so that you don't have a teacher or a student that hadn't logged on in 30 or 60 days. So I think when both of those issues have been addressed sufficiently, you're going to see some improvement there.
Right, and we're talking about things programmed. They can function without these computers. We already know that because everybody sitting up here, nobody had a computer. Computer used to be in the room this big. It can be done. Thank you so much, Mr. Smith, for your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mrs. Albritton will provide an update on summer employment, student employment.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, other members of the board, Interim Superintendent Dr. Smith, colleagues, and community members. I am able to confirm that opportunities are being provided for students to work supporting certain district programs and initiatives. These efforts are being coordinated by the sponsoring division. One effort that I can share is being sponsored by Teaching and Learning and Strategic Improvement. Students are being secured to provide tutoring services through the Summer Enrichment Academy program. So that's one example of how students are being employed.
And how would they know where to find this information?
So the students aren't being hired through our traditional hiring process. So that division is the sponsoring unit. And so they have practices in place. So I would have to yield to someone in TLSI to share.
Yes, can someone please share? Because if we could keep these kids busy, maybe we wouldn't have bad news every day.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Vice Chair, Superintendent, Dr. Smith, and board members and community. The high school principals have flyers that are been distributed to our students via the platform on the websites for the school. We've also met, and we are trying to get at least 20 students from each school. We hope to get at least 200 students to participate in this tutoring opportunity.
How much money are we paying?
$15 an hour.
All right. I hope all you people on Facebook, I hope Clayton County moms and dads, I hope you all are watching tonight because I know you're making some comments. I just don't have time to look at what you're saying tonight. $15 an hour. High schools, how many, what's the number again?
Age 15 to 17, $15 an hour.
And how many were you trying to get per?
We're targeting at least 200 Clayton County Public School students.
About 200 students. That's some money out of your, you don't have to worry about them asking for it. Some money in their pockets. Hold on, don't leave. We have Ms. Williams with a question.
I turned it off. She said the age. I was trying to see if some of the college kids can come back. Like my son need a job this summer. And he graduated 2 years ago, but he can come tutor. And, you know, if you don't get enough kids, let me know.
Totally understand.
And, you know, that would actually be a good idea if we could look at our college students because, you know, it's good for us to give those nice little scholarships when, that's what happens. We give them when they're going into college, but they need some, to sustain being able to go to college and, and make it. So that really would be good if we had, especially if we were tracking, we have those students that are sign up to go to teacher prep courses. I have one that actually lives up the street from me, and he's actually doing something at Savannah State, but that would be good because he did email me and say, Miss Gorey, I'm graduating, I'm gonna need a job. So I'm gonna send you his name, Miss Albert. He wants to come back and teach for us. And I really want to commend, some of our schools. I know Drew has a lot of students that are their graduates, and East Clayton has a young man that's actually teaching 5th grade this year. I met him online, and he's come back to the school that he graduated. So it would be good too if we would think about that.
And Madam Chair, this initiative is designed to grow our own.
All right, we appreciate that. And because I'm still got that $1 million that I want rolled over for their partnership. And I hope we can, talk about it a little sooner next year. So the kids will know before they go. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Business Services update by Ms. Ramona Bivens.
Good evening. Good evening again, Madam Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, board members, Interim Superintendent Dr. Smith, and colleagues and community. Okay, that's the right one. So this evening, we're gonna do the monthly preliminary financial statements. These have been provided to the board, and you should have received in your executive summary the statement of revenues and expenses and the general fund balance report. The statement of revenues and expenses shows the annual budget along with the monthly and year-to-date budget compared to actuals for the month and the year. So this is the statement that's showing here. As you can see that we have collected 82.9% of our budgeted revenues. If you look at the sources of revenues, local taxes, we're at 99.7%. So we're right on the money of the projection. We collected 144.5% of our other local revenue and 72.7% of our QBE money. Of course, we have money coming in for May and June, so that number will go up as well. And on our total expenditures, we have 420 million, which is 76.6% of our total expenditure budget. So right now, revenues are trending higher than our expenses. So we're projecting an ending fund balance based on this of $209.2 billion. Any questions on that before I go to the SPLOST? All right. So next we have the SPLOST. This is, of course, provides the primary source of funding for the school district for its capital needs. This is our 6th SPLOST program that's been approved by voter referendum. And this report shows the monthly collections for last month, for the month of April and March, and for the last 3 months, actually, basically, for this year as compared to last year. As you can see, we're right in the same ballpark. For April, we collected 5.6 million versus the $5.5 million in April of 2022. The state also released a report in March, released a press release stating that sales tax distributions to local governments have increased by 7.8%. This was back for February. So we are still seeing some slight increases. Any questions on the SPLOST collections before we go to the purchasing report? Okay. So next we have the purchasing report, and based on board policy DJEAA, the purchase of any non-consumable item with a value of $50,000. Yes.
Go ahead, Mr. Christmas.
Look like on the administration complex, the sewage. Huh? Are we there? Where am I at? No, this where I'm at. Go back to, I done lost it.
On the SPOS?
Huh?
Is it on the SPOS report?
H&H Plumbing. Huh?
Is that on the purchasing report, Mr. Christmas?
Oh, that's where you was going? All right.
We good? Okay. Okay, so on the purchase report, any purchase of, the purchase of any non-consumable item with a value of $50,000 or more, and the purchase of a group of non-consumable items from a single vendor on individual or sequential purchase orders with a total value of $50,000 or more shall be approved by the Board of Education prior to purchase and/or prior to the execution of any agreements to purchase. The policy also requires that at the regular monthly board meeting, the superintendent or designee will provide a report of all purchases greater than $10,000, which were approved during the prior month and not previously approved by the board. So in response to this policy, the purchasing department has included in this executive summary a detailed account of all purchases and contracts with a value exceeding $50,000 that require board approval. We also attached spreadsheet reports. So the first one is Report A of consumable purchases made with a value of $10,000 or more. The second one is Report B, non-consumable purchase made with a value of $10,000 or more, but less than $50,000. And then Report C is the non-consumable items with a value of $50,000 or more that require board approval as detailed in the executive summary. So, do you have any questions on those?
I'm trying to see, you said we needed to go back. Is this where
Well,
you're?
I wanted to go to Report B. I know this doesn't need board approval, but, the sewer line at the administration complex, we spent 20 grand on. Is Measure paying any of that?
That's a Dr. Smith, or someone else.
Mr. Job is gonna ask that.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the board, Superintendent Dr. Smith. No, sir, the cost for that repair was associated with an existing sewer line that was not installed by Measure Construction. So we work with maintenance to identify the appropriate method to make the necessary repairs. Like for example, we had some HVAC issues that was work performed by Measure Construction. So we made sure that Measure Construction performed those repairs under the warranty process.
Okay, so when we start renovating older buildings and doing these remodels, can we make sure that those old pipes that's in those buildings is wrapped up into the contract with whoever we're contracting with, so we don't have to come back and spend $20,000?
Absolutely, sir. As we're having our maintenance, the construction folks, along with Ronnie's team, have robust conversations about any existing projects before we start construction on new projects.
Because this should have been caught prior to. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Well, actually, to your point though, Mr. Christmas, that wasn't the only place. I know we were having problems throughout the district with situations like that. I think we had a lot of people too, but of course, in that building, that was renovated, we didn't want to see that, but I know across the district, we were having a lot of problems with sewage and them having, because I think people were putting, they were pulling out masks and all kind of things like that. So we've been having that issue across the district as well. But I do agree that, if we're gonna go and do some renovations, those are things we need to think about before we spend a lot of money.
That's all I have for this evening.
Are there any other questions about any of the contracts on this purchasing report? Okay, seeing, Ms. Hill.
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you so much. If we can go to, I believe this is the report. This is B, and it's number 4. It's under the request of CIA. And it's the purpose of the contract is to provide book jobber services for the district. Media Center.
Which one is it, Ms. Hill?
This is number 4. And I believe that, it's page 5 of 7.
Gotcha, okay.
And just a little clarification, if I may, please.
Dr. Young? Is that one of yours? On number 4, the curriculum instruction and assessment request to enter into contracts with the 5 vendors listed below for 1 year with 4 one-year renewal options of an estimated annual cost of $1,600,000. And it's to provide book jobber services for the district's media centers and classroom library services. For books, she said it's for textbooks. No, ma'am, this is for,
Just our general textbooks, is it for our media center? Is this for the libraries?
but this says, here it says services include repairs for library bound, publisher bound, and paperback books, and shelf-ready processing for existing and new library collections.
So with book jobber services, when we purchase books, they have to be bound and classified. So there's a coating that goes on the back of the books. So that is, it encompasses that when we get new collections in, they have to be processed. Some of the books have binders on them. If the binders need replacing and repairs, all of that is included in the book jobber contract.
Okay.
So it's
but is
not
that
just for books.
Is that for the media center?
It's
or-
for all the media centers.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brewer. See, somebody knew the answer.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions? All right, thank you.
Oh, Mr. Joseph.
Good evening once again, Madam Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the board, Superintendent Dr. Smith. You've received the SPLOST construction update for the month of May. There were 4 payments totaling $531,000. There were no change orders executed during this period. Update on Forest Park Middle School. We have tentatively set aside June 15th at 5 p.m. for the groundbreaking ceremony for Forest Park Middle School. The next item is the
June 5th, please repeat the ribbon cutting ceremony, groundbreaking ceremony for Forest Park. They didn't catch that date.
June 15th at 5 p.m. for the groundbreaking ceremony for Forest Park Middle School.
Now, before we even go any further, who do you all expect to be at the groundbreaking ceremony?
The word was tentatively scheduled, so we are working with the board and the new assistant to confirm that date and time.
The date is tentative, Madam Chair, so that's the one we're starting with. If that's not the acceptable date for the consensus of the board, we're flexible enough to change.
Well, this is what I would like to say. It would be really nice when you all do these things, if you all can just kind of give us a heads up so that we can kind of plan our schedule, because of course, we want to be there, but when we just find out, y'all just tell us, well, it's going to be such and such a time. And I believe we have we have budget hearings that week. So if we could can y'all just give us a little courtesy to send us an email or something? That it would be nice. Okay.
Absolutely.
I get it. Okay.
All right.
Glad to hear it. We're ready to start.
Yeah, you've seen the buildings are coming down at Forest Park Middle School, as well as the old Riverdale Elementary School. That entire site has been demolished. So more to come.
Okay.
The next item is the resolution declaring the SPLOST vote result on March 21st, 2023. The vote for the SPLOST continuation was approved by the citizens of Clayton County. The Clayton County Board of Elections has certified the vote results with 12,864 votes cast for and 3,375 votes cast against. So there's a recommendation of the superintendent to approve the resolution certifying the SPLOST results. The next item is the Clayton County Convocation Center and the Clayton County College and Career Academy bid. Bids were received on May 9th, 2023 at 3 p.m. from 2 firms. It is recommendation that Media Construction be awarded the bid for the base bid amount of $117 million. There was 39.66% SLBE participation.
Now, my question on this one is, how did we go from the 85 million price for this facility? And maybe I've been misunderstanding it the whole time. I thought it was 85 million and we were getting 10 million from the county, but maybe initially I should have been thinking 85 plus 10. Is that what I should have been thinking?
Yes, ma'am. We are seeing cost escalations due to inflation, lack of competition. You're seeing about a 20% increase in construction cost. You see that, I think Ms. Bivens reported that we're seeing a 7% increase in SPLOST collections, but it's not keeping it at the rate of inflation. I bring to mind we're not unique to these additional costs. Cherokee High School just received a bid for a new high school that came in at $195 million. 195.
Yeah, but I get that, but I'm just trying to understand that maybe the number that should have been in my mind was 95 million. So if that was the case, then why are we just finding out that we thought it was about 95, that now we're up to, I'm gonna just round it up and say 120 million. And so higher than 120. I'm just saying, I mean, I didn't expect that. And then we're talking about the competition. We have 2 people. I know one of the things that's holding us up is because we did try to have this minority. We put that into the policy. And now I'm wondering, should that be, do we need to rethink that? Because I'm just looking at one company that has received every penny. And I mean, I appreciate some of the things that they do, but I've just seen some instances where I have some, not
Madam
reservations.
Chair, the cost would have went up in spite of the policy. All the policy does is ensure that at least 30% will be local participation, not minority, but local participation is the new policy. So whether or not we enacted that or not, due to like Mr. Joseph has pointed out, inflation, lack of competition, Mr. Joseph and I have met with numerous potential contractors to encourage them to take swings at our projects, and this is what we're getting.
Right. Miss Williams.
Okay, on here I see you got Carroll Daniel Construction Company. They came in at 123. So how come we can't negotiate the price with them? Because Media's already doing like 6 projects. So their price is not going like 5 million more. You can't just like see if you can bring them down a little bit or some kind of.
That's not.
I mean, I don't know, because they got the same qualifications, but Media's already doing 6 different projects. Like how many can they do all at once?
Yeah, the procurement method we used was the competitive bid, so we can't negotiate or give it to the higher bidder.
Isn't there a buffer for local business?
No, sir, that was considered, but legal said that stipulation cannot be entertained for construction costs.
And Mr. Joseph, if
So
you
it has
can
to go
also
to the
explain the model that we're going to, so we can encourage and have more participation in our bidding.
So again, you've seen the history of recent bids, 2 bidders to the table, 1 not really adhering to the SLBE policy. So we are working with legal and procurement to for the next round of bids to use the RFP CM at risk model, where cost will be a weighted factor in determining who gets the award of the project. However, other criteria will be analyzed in terms of punch list, quality control, schedule, etc. So the next round of projects will include the Lovejoy High School, North Clayton High School, the Riverdale Early Learning Center. So we'll utilize a different method to procure for those projects.
Ms.
Okay,
Baker,
hold on. I need
well,
to
I'm gonna come back to you.
Let's
We got-
answer my question, because he was answering my question. Okay.
It's not an option for
I'm about to say, so we have to take the lowest bid, is what
Yes,
you're
ma'am.
saying? Okay.
Oh, okay, I thought he had answered. I was just gonna come back to you, Ms. Baker.
Okay, we're getting ready to go to GSBA down in Savannah, and every time I go down there, we have all the vendors, and they always say, oh, we want to do business with you. Are these just smaller, are they handling smaller districts, and that's why they don't come to us? Or do you have an idea of why they don't come? Because when I walk up to them, they're like, oh, here's our card, we want to do business with you.
It's frustrating because I attend conferences as well. We've spent months trying to get these firms to provide a number for Clayton County. Historically, they have. Candidly, it's just a supply and demand issue. The market is flooded with construction projects. So we're not unique for this scenario. Again, I go back to Cherokee County. They too only had 2 bidders. So this is just sort of the environment that we are in.
Mr. Striker.
I think this is more for Dr. Smith, both of you actually. In tracking the actual granted bids, are we getting that 30% local subcontractors from Meager?
Yes, sir, we are.
So they are subcontracting
Yep.
with 30%, at least a minimum of 30%.
Yeah, for every bid since the board policy was enacted in June or July, we show you the percentage of SLBE participation. We have hired a firm, Prism, that will to confirm that the general contractor is indeed adhering to those percentages.
And they're also checking the integrity of the individuals that are subcontracting, so it's not just a figurehead that.
Yes, it's being handled through our procurement department, but yes, that's my understanding what's taking place.
That's confirmed through the department within the school system, not them just saying we're doing it. Yes.
And that's not only construction bids, that's all purchases.
All right, but now this is the problem that I see that's going to end up happening. I think maybe we might need to go back to the drawing board and with this policy that we have about this local, because at some point, if they have all of these projects going and 30% has to be local, at some point, if they bid on every project that we have, I think that's gonna be kind of impossible for them to continue to have 30% of local contractors, because we probably might not even have that amount of people available. If I just look right now at going to go through a fast foods, we don't even have those type of workers in the county, because they're going to probably know what to bid every time. And there is a way around this. Because I just had this discussion with my daughter last night. That's what she does, what she used to do.
And that is precisely, Madam Chair, why we're trying to go to a different model.
Right, because I think we need to change what we're doing, because I think we're shooting ourselves in the foot at this point, because we want quality. And I mean, of course, we want to, hire local people, but this is too much money for someone to be putting something down on paper that they have something. And then we look up and have the same problem got to shut the place down because of sewage or whatever. I just think that we're giving one person too much work. And I would really like to see the staff that they have that they claim is coming locally. Plus the fact we are giving this to someone, and guess what? We don't know what this place looks like. You all have given us a nice little, PowerPoint, but I don't know what this place looks like. And before I vote on them next week, we're supposed to vote on it. I don't know, I might not be able to go with a yes. I don't know what the place looks like. I've just seen a nice PowerPoint. I need to know what it's gonna look like when I walk in there. I think Ms. Baker sent some suggestions. I know after going to the GICC, you go in the bathroom, you wash your hands over here, but the paper towel is on the other side of the room. Now your floor is all wet. Then, if I slip up and fall, it's gonna be Gory versus Gory, because I'm gonna have to sue that's gonna say, oh, what kind of lawsuit is this? The board chair suing herself. Just some practical things. We would like to see a floor plan and everything that we're going to get before we even say somebody's gonna build it. Is that possible?
Absolutely. We had the renders, we had the floor plans, we provided a video. We thought that was beneficial, but we'll be glad to share everything that we have.
Okay. Poor Mr. Joseph, I'm giving him such a hard time. Ms. Baker.
I just made the suggestion that if we could blow it up big enough that we could actually have it in the lobby, because I don't know about you, but my eyes are getting a little older, even though I'm not. So if we could just put something in the lobby, so anybody who comes in can see, oh, look, this is what it's gonna look like, you know.
Yes.
What we'll do.
Because, you all have North Clayton y'all had that nice little pretty picture, but I don't know what it looks like either on the inside, because y'all like glass. I don't like glass. And we don't, and we really do need to start talking to our constituents about what are some of the things that they would like to see, instead of these nice pretty pictures that these people are getting a nice chunk of money off of conceptualizing. Any other comments? Sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Jones.
All right, the last thing is the electrical vehicle charging stations at the high schools. The vendor has agreed to pay for all the infrastructure costs, so there'll be no cost to the district. And they also agreed to provide 10%, share 10% of the profits for these electrical charging stations. So you've seen the renderings of the locations. So the recommendation from the superintendent is the approval of the electrical vehicle charging stations deployment agreement. And once the agreement has been approved, we'll come back and provide more information in terms of easements, land locations, et cetera.
All right, since we're doing these charging stations, do we have, since we're gonna have these buses as well next year, do we have those charging stations in place for our electric buses that are coming?
We met with transportation 2 weeks ago. We're coordinating the financing and the installation. Our team's working with transportation, and so that work is ongoing.
Okay. Are there any other questions? We sorry we gave you a hard time.
All right, thank you all.
Okay.
Good evening again, all. All human resource updates were submitted to the Board of Education for your review. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Ms. Albritton, before I have Ms. Hill's light, but can you give us a little brief, even though, we've seen it, can you just give us a little overview for those people that are looking, as far as how we're looking with, our contracts and all that type of stuff before?
So we have completed all 3 rounds of contract distributions, but as we are aware, contracted educators do have until June 15th to seek to be released without penalty from their contracts. We are in the throes of our busy season, and we've reconstituted our face-to-face new hire orientation, and it's been recoined as the new hire experience. We host a session tomorrow, and we are anticipating 34 new hires to attend tomorrow.
So what about how we're looking at with the vacancies as staffing for next year?
Okay, so I received the latest vacancy list on Thursday, and as of Thursday, there were 494 vacancies.
Okay. All right, Ms. Hill, go ahead. I'm sorry, I might have asked one of your questions. I'm sorry.
Yes, ma'am, Madam Chair, thank you so much. And just to piggyback off of what Madam Chair indicated, I wanted to know, out of those 494 vacancies, are they funded vacancies? I know sometimes with vacancies, they're there in number, but are they actually funded positions?
So those are current vacancies, meaning there was either someone in the position, the teaching position this year, who is not returning to the district, or it's a carryover vacancy, which alludes to the vacancy wasn't filled this school term. So we are actively recruiting for 494 teachers.
So let me just ask a different way so I can be clear. If we were to hire 494 teachers, we would be able to fund each one of those positions.
Yes, they're all budgeted for. Is that what you're asking? Mhm. They're
Maybe-
all in the budget.
Okay, okay,
Yes.
But
thank you.
But
Thank
do
you.
you also mean, when she's saying funded, do you also mean by FTE?
Just overall, I mean, funded FTE in our budget and the balanced budget that we just talked about, just making sure that that money is readily available as we hire.
So my response would be yes, because those are vacancies that were either filled this year, but the teacher is not returning, or it was a vacancy that was established previously and the school was not able to hire a teacher this year. And so all of those positions would still be in the budget, and funds would have been allocated for them.
Thank you so much.
Are there any other questions? Before we move on, I think we're done. Thank you, Ms. Hubbard. Before we go to the board matters, one thing that I'm just looking at Ms. Henderson. I want to commend her because she volunteered for the graduations, but she was sitting there with that computer and she was busy hiring people. So I want to give her a shout out. She was working, really, everybody that came down there, y'all were working out there on your feet, and then as soon as you came in, you were working when we were in between graduations. One other thing I wanted to speak about before we go, I know we're doing I talked to Dr. Smith about this today, but we need to let the public know when we are going to start our summer feeding program. I was going to get my feet done today, a little relaxation. And when I pulled up, I saw a whole family of children sitting out in front of I guess that's the Office Depot. And I came out maybe 2 hours later and they were still sitting on the curb. And I realized that I went in the subway. This lady said, well, that one sandwich that you're buying won't feed those kids that are sitting out there on the curb. And I think that someone had come and given them a couple of pizzas. And I was telling that lady that, we're doing the summer feeding, but I don't think our parents know. And I think it seems like we kind of changed it, but that's kind of sad to see a whole family of children just sitting on the sidewalk hoping that someone's gonna come and help give them some money. I actually was digging in my pocket after I came out, but they had disappeared. And so when are we starting? I don't know if Ms. Hamilton is in here, but is there anybody that can tell us when that will start?
Good evening, Madam Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, Superintendent, members of the board. I'll get that information to you all tomorrow. We'll send it out through communications to our internal and external stakeholders so that all of you are aware.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Okay, so we're done with the superintendent's cabinet. The next thing we have on the item is the first read of policy series I. Do we have anything, board members, that we want to discuss today? Or are we ready to, when we have our second read, do you all have anything else? Because I'm just going to admit, I was tired. I didn't get to that. I'll be prepared the next time. All right, the next item is for action is the international travel for school year. Is someone coming to present that? Okay.
I would say good evening again, but I should say buenas noches.
All
Because we're getting ready
right.
to go to Spain. So buenas noches, Madam Chair and Mr. Vice Chair and Interim Superintendent. Based on the popularity of the CCPS Travels Program, we now have 3 schools applying for travel plans in 2024. So in your agenda, you'll see that you have MD Roberts School of the Arts. They're planning a trip to Great Britain, France, Switzerland, and Germany. Jonesboro High School is planning a trip to France and Spain. And Smith Elementary is planning a trip to Paris, London, and Rome. So in your executive summary, there are itineraries, there are logistics, cost, purpose, educational objectives, all of that information in your agenda. And at this time, we are recommending approval for each trip as per the Board of Education policy on international field trips and excursions.
And, excuse me, Madam Chair and board members, a recent request came in. Mrs. Cox will be updating her 2024 international travel to include a request from Jonesboro High School to participate in a tournament in the Bahamas. But that's not until the winter.
In a couple of months, right?
All right, the only question that I have is that all of that does not have to happen now. If there are other schools that want to go.
These are the schools that have applied at this time.
Mhm.
And so at this time, because many of them are traveling in spring break or on the spring break of 2024, we wanted to go ahead and bring it in front of the board. The policy states it must be 6 months before the group travels. And so we wanted to make sure that we brought that before you guys now.
Okay, well, I'm just sitting here wondering, do we need to change that?
To a shortened or
Yes,
lengthened period of time?
because I would not like to deny anybody the opportunity. If they have the money and it's planned correctly, I would like to, I would say, yes, they can go. But I just want to make sure it's ongoing. And
Yes, it is
maybe we're not.
ongoing, and
Okay.
lots of schools are taking
Okay.
taking this opportunity. So, and we have representatives here tonight.
Okay. Are there any questions? Okay, thank you. Okay, because that should be on our agenda for next week to vote on. Okay, but this item on the agenda, the tentative agenda, we need to vote on that tonight. Okay, so Ms. Bivens gave us a tentative adoption of the fiscal year 2024 budget, and we do need to approve that this evening. So do I have a motion, Ms. Baker?
Madam Chair, I move that we accept the tentative budget as presented.
All right, Mr. Straker.
So moved, Madam Chair.
All right, it's been moved and properly second that we approve the tentative adoption of the fiscal year 2024. Dr. Haney. Okay, now, Mr. Christmas, were you making a motion? Okay, all right, so I'll take you off. All right, so it's a unanimous vote. All right, the next item that we have on the agenda, let me clear the board, is the adoption of the proposed agenda for June the 5th. And do I have a motion for Mr. Straker?
So moved, Madam
All
Chair.
right, I need a second, Ms. Cooper.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and properly second that we accept the the proposed agenda for our next meeting. Ms. Hill, do you have a question?
No, Madam Chair,
Okay, all right, I need a vote from Ms. Hill, Dr. Haney, and Ms. Williams, okay? All right, it's a unanimous vote.
Madam Chair, I'm looking over the agenda and it looks like we've covered everything.
I think we have. It's been quite lengthy. Thank you all so much for your patience. We're adjourned.